So there I was, furiously typing away, writing one of the epic concluding scenes in The Hidden Blade, and I wrote these fateful words: Raoul lit a torch. And then I stared at them, and I stared at my hands, and I realized that I had only 2 hands and Raoul had only 2 hands. And I held up my hands like this, and imagined a medieval torch in this hand and a tinderbox in this hand, and I could not figure out how Raoul elegantly lights that wheel-trodden torch. Does he put the torch between his knees? Does the tinderbox have holes for his fingers? How does this work? Then I decided I didn't like flint and steel or even tinderboxes. So I went on a sleuth hunt to discover a better way to have him light the torch that would still be in keeping with the technology level of my world. And that's what I want to talk to you about today: the impact of technology and how you can use it to build a richer fantasy world. Hello and welcome to Just in Time Worlds with your host, Marie Mullaney. Today is all about history and technology and who has used it well. I am going to discuss certain key inventions and the way that they have developed through the ages, thus influencing the technology level that they're used in. I'll also address the subgenres of fantasy and the specific technology levels that you need in those subgenres. If you like this kind of world-building content, please do consider smashing that subscribe button. And I do also have a Discord server where you can connect with me and other world builders. If you would like to support me in making more of these videos, you can hit my Ko-fi page or buy my book, The Hidden Blade, and more about that at the end of the video. Okay, let's get cracking. Let's start with the absolute basics. One of the most fundamental technologies is control over fire. Without control over fire, you're basically not going to have technology. Without fire, you don't have heat. So you don't have one of your most fundamental energy sources. Not only does it ensure survival on cold days and allow you to drive away predators, without fire you can't even make pottery, since you need the heat of the flame to bake the clay. We tamed fire over 250,000 years ago, before modern humans, that's us, had even evolved. And fire was a pretty important thing, because making fire was hard. The Quest for Fire, which is a 1911 French fantasy classic, tells the story of a tribe of Neanderthals whose fire goes out and they have to recover it. It is a classic hero's journey, and the world building is very appropriate for the given technology level. The tribe has lost its greatest piece of technology, its tame fire, and without it they cannot live. The book has been translated into English and it is an interesting read, though in fairness, it is more than a century old, the writing style is weird to modern audiences, and the depiction of women is very typical of the time, so be warned. Jane M. Auel handles fire as well in her Earth's Children series. In the first book, fire is made by using friction of wood on wood. If you've ever tried this, you know that it takes an enormous amount of time and real effort. Because of this, it was important not to let the fire go out, and for the fire to be carried from campsite to campsite as a glowing coal in an aurochs horn. Later, when Isla, the main character, is living by herself, she discovers a stone that, if struck by her flint tools, causes a spark. She calls the stone a firestone. Today, we know that it's iron pyrite. With what amounts to flint and steel, Isla has much greater control over fires, and as she travels across the Paleolithic landscape, she gifts this new technology to various people. Flint and steel was with us for a very long time as a species. We eventually used tinderboxes as a means of making it easier to use this technology to generate a fire. In the 6th century AD, however, China was using what they called fire-inch sticks. These were small sticks of pine wood impregnated with sulfur. The matches were not self-igniting, but they would take fire at the least touch of flame, making it easier to use the spark from flint and steel. During the Renaissance, Western scientists started looking into the chemistry to control fire, and this culminated in the Promethean match that was patented by Samuel Jones of London in 1828. His match consisted of a small glass capsule containing sulfuric acid coated on the exterior with potassium chlorate rolled in paper. If you crushed the glass capsule, the chemicals would ignite and boom, fire. This was obviously not a super safe mechanism. Chemical matches were never going to be cheap or easy to make. But friction matches, that was the holy grail. John Walker successfully invented a friction match in 1826. He was a chemist, and while he was preparing to light a fire using a chemical mixture, a match, which was dipped in the chemical soup of his fire mix, lit through friction on the hearth. He immediately realized what he had found and started making friction matches. They consisted of wooden splints or sticks of cardboard coated with sulfur and tipped with a mixture of sulfide of antimony, chlorate of potash, and gum. The natural gum excreted by trees, not the kind you chew. This was the rabbit hole that I fell down after writing those fateful words, Raoul lit a torch. After I'd read all of that, I decided that I could perfectly easily make the jump from sulfur-infused sticks to friction matches if I had an alchemist guild. So I invented an alchemist guild, who have not featured in the books yet, and they invented an item called a sparker, which is a match based on the match that John Walker discovered. And that's why the Hidden Blade has a sparker that Raoul uses to light that torch. If you read The Hidden Blade and you reach those words, remember this video. And if you like knowing where sparkers come from, hit the thumbs up button on this video. Matches made fire extremely controllable. Of course, humans being humans, there is no limit to our inventiveness. Now that we have control over fire, we've weaponized it in the shape of flamethrowers, which should be a staple of all fantasy books where you're fighting vampires, in my opinion. Fire was one of the truly game-changing technologies in our history, and our control over it has tracked with our additional discoveries of technology. The level of control that your society has over fire determines a great deal about their technology level. If you can't light fires easily, you have to spend energy to preserve your fire. You need fire to bake pottery and bricks. You need hotter fire to smelt brass into bronze. Even hotter to smelt iron and create steel. Glass requires fire. Fire, once it's weaponized, is a frightening and frankly devastating weapon. So when you're picking your tech level, consider the level of control that your society has over fire. Fire was not the only game-changing technology. Agriculture fundamentally altered our society, and agriculture has a lot of technology associated with it, first and foremost of which is the plow and harnessing of domesticated animals to that plow. The level of agricultural technology says a lot about your society. Has your society managed to harness animals to the plow? What does their plow look like? Does it have metal tips, or is it all made out of wood, or is it all metal? Do you have tractors attached to your plow? So do you have the internal combustion engine? Agriculture used to require a lot of labor. That's why we had so many children. But as we automated agricultural technology, that requirement for large families reduced, and farms now can be run with minimal personnel. What happens in your world if that kind of technology is introduced? What if you have golems who automate farm work? So think about your agriculture and the level of technology which is being used on your farms and where that puts you on the agricultural technology level. Every time I read about the farmhand hero, the boy who comes from a farm who becomes a hero, I wonder how much thought the author put into the technology level of their agriculture. But agriculture is not the most interesting technological topic, so let's turn our attention to the cavalry unit of warfare and how that has developed through the ages. The discovery of the wheel and the creation of the chariot caused a fundamental shift in warfare that I most closely associate with the Bronze Age. David Gemmell's Troy is set in this period. So is Ursula Le Guin's Earthsea, actually. Ged's father is a bronze worker, and there's definitely an Odysseus-inspired obsession with sailing. Getting back to chariots, in order to build this war-going device, you needed to have mastered taming horses, or whatever you're going to use to pull the chariot, and you need the wheel to have been invented, and you need to be able to work in metal well enough to make armor for the chariots. The problem with chariots is that the wheel doesn't always do well on all terrains. It was the invention of the stirrup that allowed mounted warriors to supplement chariot drivers, and the first cataphracts appeared after the stirrup made it possible for a rider to have leverage to wield a weapon while in the saddle. So if you want mounted warriors, you need the stirrup to have been invented. If you don't have a stirrup, you probably have chariots as your cavalry unit, if the wheel has been invented. Of course, in the modern day and age, our cavalry is the giant tracked vehicles, tanks. In order to have that kind of mechanized cavalry, you need the internal combustion engine or its equivalent to have been invented. You need excellent control of fire, and you probably need gunpowder and guns. Let's talk briefly about guns. Gunpowder, especially the early version thereof, is actually quite simple to make. It has been used in China since the Tang Dynasty in the 9th century AD. The world's oldest surviving firearm, and I am going to absolutely butcher this name, so please forgive me, but the world's oldest known firearm is the Hei Long Yang hand cannon. It is a bronze hand cannon that was manufactured before the 14th century. It weighs 3.5 kilograms and is 34 centimeters long. Gunpowder was being made by 1346 in England, and bombs were definitely being used by then. These bombs and firearms were not super reliable until we figured out how to apply corning to the gunpowder, which is when you heat it up in order to give it a more even result, so you didn't have so much unreliability in your gunpowder. Like most inventions, guns are slow develop until suddenly they speed along, and this century we have seen guns explode from revolvers to 50 cal sniping rifles to automatic weapons. So your use of guns can stretch all the ways from basic gunpowder and explosive to hand cannon type weapons to front-loading muskets to revolvers and all the way up to our modern technology and the fearsome weapons we have now. The Powder Mage trilogy uses guns in a great way in the musket front-loading tradition. Jim Butcher, in his urban fantasy The Dresden File, uses guns excellently, where Harry Dresden quite often shoots the villain instead of using his magic. Because let's face it, guns are powerful weapons, perhaps even more powerful than magic. So when you're building your world, consider carefully whether gunpowder has been invented yet, and consider carefully where you are in technological level in consideration of gunpowder and guns. The one piece of technology that I haven't spoken about is the ability to write and the instruments associated with writing, everything from glass pens to ink quills. The reason why I haven't spoken about it is because writing is such a complex topic and there are so many rituals associated with it that I really do feel it deserves its own video. So if you would like me to make a video on writing, fantasy authors who've used writing well, and where writing comes from in our history, comment below, let me know, and while you're commenting, if you've enjoyed the video, please do give it a like. There is one more topic that I need to cover as part of this video on technology, and that is the specific subgenres of fantasy and how your technology level needs to be applied there. There are some subgenres of fantasy that require special consideration. Science fantasy requires enough blending of science fiction elements with fantasy elements to make the reader feel that they are in a fantastical and yet scientific world. Most of Anne McCaffrey's work falls in this range for me. Specifically, the Talent series is a good example. Here, people with psychic talents can draw power generated by technology by a generator. This allows the T1 talents to transport ships instantaneously between the planets of the Nine-Star League. This kind of blending of technology and magic is, in my mind, the iconic part of science fantasy. Gas lamp fantasy and steampunk are both set in Renaissance-level technology, but gas lamp should include horror or gothic elements, and steampunk should be more focused on technology fueled by magic. Powder fantasy must include guns. No guns, no powder fantasy. And of course, if you want to write historical fiction like Jane M. Auel or Jacqueline Carey, you must be very precise in your technology. You can change a lot in an alternate history story, but if you are going to change the technology level, you better do it in such a way that you respect the intelligence of your reader. And those are my specific genre recommendations for technology in fantasy. Have I missed any? Let me know in the comments below. So what does all this mean for you? Unless you're writing in one of the sub-genres I've mentioned, you are going to need to pick a technology level for your world. My advice when picking this is consider where you stand with regards to fire, gunpowder, agricultural technology, and cavalry technology. Based on where you stand on those 4 types of technology, pick the technology level that fits best with where you want to be with regards to those technologies. Don't be afraid to import a technology that isn't necessarily in that technology level in our world. Remember, this is your world and you have fantasy elements. You can magic a technology into being if you want to. And for some advice on how to include magic in technology and how to make ubiquitous magic feel real, you can check out my video on how to make ubiquitous magic feel real. It is actually so cool what we have invented over the years. And incorporating it into your world, incorporating inventions into your world, will make your world feel richer and more real to those experiencing it. And that is my take on technology in a fantasy world. I hope that you enjoyed that episode of Just in Time Worlds. If you did, please do hit the thumbs up button. It really does help the channel grow. If you want to support me in making more of these videos, you can buy my book, The Hidden Blade, or you can visit my Ko-fi page where you can buy memberships, give one-off donations, or browse my shop for more. And I will see you soon for another episode of Just in Time Worlds.